The ego is neutral. It's neither good or bad. It's all about the direction that it's being compelled in. The direction that it's gravitating towards. Is it gravitating towards the higher aspects of yourself or the lower aspects of yourself? Is it gravitating towards your higher nature, which is your divine nature, or your lower nature, which is your human nature? The ego is just a neutral point. That would be the human body, or the human ego, I should say. So the human ego is driven either to ascend or to descend. It's either driven towards divinity or is driven further towards humanity. But the ego is neutral. It's a tool. It's all about how you use the tool. The tool isn't good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative. It's all about the intent, the will, or the motivation behind what the ego is being used for. The influence behind the ego, influencing it to go in a higher direction or a lower direction. Because you're really just talking about self, higher self, and lower self. But to say that the ego is the bad guy, or it needs to be destroyed, or death to the ego, things like that, like I said before, it's kind of vague. You know, what you're really talking about is poor character qualities, you know, poor characteristics, poor qualities, poor human nature. But you're not necessarily talking about the ego. See, because some people, when they talk about the ego, or most people, when they talk about the ego, they refer to the ego as being like this negative force, or this sinister force that's compelling you to do all of these sinister, low vibrational things, that's encouraging you to overindulge in fleshly things, worldly things, chaos or carnage, to indulge in fleshly pleasures and desires. But see, the ego also does the opposite. See, the ego can also be that force that's compelling you to be the best you that you can be, the best you that you should be. That force that's compelling you towards divinity, that's pushing you towards discipline, towards strong willpower, towards dedication to ascension. See, the things that's influencing you to study, to train, to learn, to expand your mind, to experience higher levels of knowledge and higher levels of thought. That is also the ego. The ego is just where your energy goes. The direction, the high, low, forward, backwards. It's just direction that the energy goes in. But it's not the energy itself. The energy is being directed. You have certain inner urges directing your energy, and then you have certain outer forces that's directing your energy. Now the thing is for you to be able to discern and know the difference between what's natural and what's synthetic, what's divine and what's not divine, what's pushing you towards your higher self, what's pushing you towards your lowest self. And being the medium point, or being the neutral point, the ego is constantly being pulled in either a higher direction or a lower direction. But to label the ego as being some sort of villain, as being some sort of antagonist, as being some sort of adversary, or some type of force that is only compelled towards, or only compelled to leading you in the wrong direction, or having you overindulge in worldly things or humanity, This is not the case. See, the ego pushes you to divinity. The ego will push you towards infinity. It will push you towards immortality. See, you have a physical aspect of the ego and you have the spiritual aspect of the ego. One is driving you to do all of these earthly, worldly, human things. Then the other is pushing you or driving you to do all of these inhuman, divine, outer worldly, outer earthly things. So it's really all about focus, the focal point, how much focus you have and where you're focusing your energy, where you're putting your attention. Because wherever you put your attention, wherever your attention goes, that's where your energy flows. So that's why it's so important that the parasitic powers that be, that they control your attention, that they control where your attention is going to, because that's how they control your energy and the direction that your energy flows. That's how they control if your energy is going to flow in a higher direction or if it's going to flow in a lower direction. If it's going to keep you stuck in the insanity of humanity or if it's going to push you to divinity. But either way, the ego is the tool, it's the driving force, it's the energy that's going in either direction, up or down, high or low. But it shouldn't be villainized. It shouldn't be deemed as being something that's wicked or something that's unrighteous, something that's meant to do you harm or something that's harmful. See, that's all about intent, or the mentality that a person has. It's about intent and mentality. If you allow your mentality to be corrupted or persuaded by outside forces that have certain agendas, then your mentality will align with those agendas. If your intent isn't of a divine nature, if your intent is of a wicked nature or a nature that's of a lower vibrational frequency, if it's pushing you to a level of lower vibration, that's the choice, that's the lack of control. So it's not even really your intent. This again is a form of mind control. Your mind, your mental faculties being hijacked and directed for you. You have no hand in this. You have no say. You have no power, no will over the direction that you're being pushed in. This is why exercising, practicing, training to develop stronger will, strengthening your will is vital. It's important. Because this is what prevents those things from happening. This is what prevents your faculties from being hijacked. This is what keeps you in control. This is what keeps you balanced. So like I said, the ego is just a neutral point, that 0 point, you could say. And it's either going to be driven to add on, positive, or it can be pushed in a direction to subtract or to take you into the negative direction. So it's either going to be pushed in what they say a positive direction or what they say in a negative direction. But it's still that neutral point. But oftentimes that gets left out when you hear the ego, or when you hear people speak about the ego. They speak about it in a context that makes it seem like it's something that isn't on your side, or that it's something that's working against you, when really the ego is just a tool. How you choose to work with it, that's on you. If you don't know how to use the tool, and you're not in control of that tool, someone will control that tool for you and use that tool for you. They'll use that tool against you. So these are the negative aspects of the ego that you hear people constantly speak about, but you don't hear them speak about the positive aspects of the ego, and how the ego can push you to be the best you that you can be, that it can push you to your divine self, that it can push you in a direction that will help you achieve all of the things that you're trying to achieve, or to fulfill your purpose. It's not necessarily this destructive force that everybody labels it as, and that they talk about as being some type of hindrance or some type of obstacle or something that's preventing you from reaching higher levels of knowledge, or higher levels of existence, higher levels of being. That's a very, very popular misperception. See, the thing is that to say that something is all good or to say something is all bad, there's really no balance in that. Because even within good and bad, there's a balance. Good had its different levels, different balance points. So does what people call bad. Really, good and bad are like the same thing, just opposite ends of the spectrum. But even within good itself, it has its own spectrum. Within bad itself, it has its own spectrum. Sometimes you do good things for good reasons. Sometimes you do good things for bad reasons. Sometimes you do bad things for good reasons. Sometimes you do bad things for bad reasons. But what is really good? What is really bad? It's all about perception, mentality, the intent that you have in the process of doing these things. But it has to be balanced out. So to say that a person should be all good, all righteous, where's the balance in that? So we talk about these things one-sided oftentimes. So this is how when you hear about the ego, you hear about one side of the ego, one end of the spectrum. You're not hearing about the other spectrum. You're not hearing about the other side or the other end. You're not hearing the positive qualities of the ego. You're not hearing about the positive attributes of the ego, the positive contributions of the ego. Because without the ego, you wouldn't have the drive to go in either direction, high or low. There'd be no drive. So I say that to say, you got to think for yourself. You also have to be very critical when analyzing different things. Where you can see things, that way you'll see things for what they really are, for what they truly are. See, oftentimes people regurgitate other people's information or what other people have came to as being truth. You know, their discoveries, you know, playing in other people's minds, as opposed to using your own original thought and being able to perceive something clearly and truly from your own perspective, from your own perception. Not looking through the lenses of others, basing it off of the perception of others, or the ideology or the theories of others. Use your mind. Have confidence in your mind. Have confidence in what you're learning. Have confidence in what you're knowing, or have confidence in what you know, and confidently apply what you know. But don't get caught up in believing the hype. Don't let people hijack your mind and control it and push it in directions that it doesn't naturally want to go in. You have to stay in control. You have to stay in control. Because like I said before, and like I'm going to say again, you have the power. Use it. You have the power. Use it.